hence the land trust. Now, what is a trust? A trust is essentially, oh, well, actually, let's take it back. So, when you think of a will, when you eventually pass away, you kind of want all your assets to go to your heirs and the people that you actually want it to. So, you would draw up a will, and then, unfortunately, once you pass away, your executors will take that will to court, and then the judge will say, okay, or the judge will appoint the executor and basically say, all right, we got the will here, and you'll be able to disperse the assets as such. But what a trust essentially allows you to do is avoid all that, or probate, as they call it. It allows you to avoid probate by establishing a trust, saying, all your assets and everything are encumbered within this trust. And, basically once you pass away, you have a successor come in and then disperse the assets for you. Probably you're still going to want to hire an attorney for that anyways, but you won't have to go through the whole court system and all that good stuff. So that's the whole point of essentially having a trust. So in this case, when we're talking about a land trust, it's basically a trust that holds land. So it's pretty much identical to a normal grantor or living trust that you would come across. And so a trust typically has about three components. The first component is the trustee. So the trustee manages and acts on behalf of the trust and beneficiary, essentially takes orders from that beneficiary, since that's the ultimate owner at the end of the day. And the trustee can be a person, an LLC, a corporation, or what have you. So it's basically just the person that manages the trust for the trust itself. And then you have the grantor, which is the person that provides the assets to fund the trust itself and gives control to the trustee. And then you have a beneficiary. And like I said, the beneficiary essentially is the owner of the trust and can give orders to the trustee. And a lot of the times, if you have a trust of your own, chances are you're all three of these. You're the person that provided the assets, it's for your benefit, and you run things. So a lot of the times it's all with one and the same person. But for all intents and purposes, we want to focus on the nominee. Sorry, let me take a step back. There's actually two key components as well, too, for the land trust in this case, is that it provides anonymity. So that's going to be important. So we'll talk about that. But also, your trust documents are not public record. So that's obviously going to be a contributing factor to the anonymity aspect of things. But like I said, we want to focus on the nominee trustee aspect of things and beneficiary primarily, and we'll go further into the nominee aspect of things shortly as well. So yeah, like I said, you fund the trust with property like real estate, and you basically avoid probate, from having to go to court. But then you ask yourself, why even set up a land trust to begin with? That essentially the land trust will stand in your place to be on title for the property that you purchased instead of it being in your own name. And we're going to talk about how you can actually implement that, because and you're probably asking yourself, well, why is that important? Because if you become wealthy and let's say on and you have a property and there's a slip and fall, or somebody just comes up with any crazy reason to want to sue you, do you really want everyone knowing that you own numerous properties, giving them more incentive to want to sue you for as much as they can? Probably not. So that's why all this anonymity and the fact that it's not public record really comes into play. So we're going to take a look at another aspect of things. The asset protection vehicle that we're all usually pretty familiar with is a limited liability company, or an LLC for short. So as far as an LLC goes, it is your business entity shield for liability protection. Now, that liability protection shield is not guaranteed, and that's where a lot of confusion comes in, because a lot of people think that, oh, okay, once you file the paperwork, you're and it becomes official with the state, then you're good to go. You're 100% protected. It's not the case. But like I said, the LLC can also coincide with the land trust in terms of helping with the anonymity aspect of things as well too. Um, the LLC is a preferred vehicle, asset protection vehicle for real estate. And a lot of times that's for more like the tax benefit aspect of things, and its flexibility and structure, less reporting requirements and things like that. And a limited liability company is public record, but like I said, in conjunction with the land trust, it will essentially be the backing force behind it. And LLCs, like I said, are public record in a lot of states, but each state has its own rules and statutes for LLCs. So you'll want to have to check them out individually for the applicable state that you're working with at the end of the day. And then there's aspects of it. There's manager managed and member managed LLCs, but we're not going to focus on that. That kind of goes beyond the scope of what we're going to talk about today. But just remember in the back of your mind, it's an asset protection vehicle. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at, now that we've set up our land trust and we know what our LLC asset protection vehicle is, now how do we put it all to work? What have we all been talking about? How do we follow in Walt Disney's footsteps? So we're going to now go ahead and discuss the nominee trustee. So when you have the word nominee, think of the word synonymous with the word temporary. And it's providing, and its whole role is to provide the anonymity aspect of things. So for instance, I have a buddy, his name is You Can Trust Me. Get it? You Can Trust Me. So yeah, you basically want to nominate as your nominee somebody that you trust, is usually a friend or somebody close to your family member, or a lot of times an attorney as well too. And they will basically be that temporary person for you to start off with. Okay, and then like I said, we have our LLC, and so just for the sake of this thing, I just titled it Protected Property LLC. So we have our asset protection vehicle. Now we're going to put that to place with the put it into play with the land trust here. What I'm going to name my trust is going to be titled 123 Fake Street Land Trust. But as you can see, the land aspect of it was crossed out. So why did I cross that out? I crossed that out because unfortunately, land trusts, even though they're perfectly legal, they're not as well known as just a normal living trust or grantor trust. And lenders tend, and because of that aspect of it, lenders tend to hesitate and become a little apprehensive when they see the word land trust as opposed to living trust or grantor trust. But like I said before, it's simply, it's just basically a living trust or a grantor trust. It's the same exact thing. It just holds real estate or property or your land, all the same thing. And by us crossing it out, it just alleviates confusion at the end of the day. And so you can choose and basically close. And oh yeah, and that's another thing as well too. Because of the fact that it alleviates that confusion, those lenders will then be more comfortable with letting you close on the title of a trust or a land trust in this case, but you would be the only one knowing that it's a land trust at the end of the day. So yeah, so then when we take a look at the next thing, so we have our trustee on file who's going to basically sign off on everything. So once you actually close on your property, your nominee trustee is going to sign off on everything. So at the end of the day, they're good. If somebody were to do a title search or and look up who owns this property, they're going to see your buddy Yukin. He's been signing off on everything, and so they're going to say, oh, Yukin, okay, let's look him up. Let's find his phone number. Oh, let's give him a call. So once you give him a call, he's basically going to answer the phone. They're going to ask, oh yeah, we need to talk to the person that owns this property. Oh, okay, I don't own it. Click. So that's your first line of defense right there. And then another pretty cool aspect of it is where you bring in the asset protection of it is you would make your beneficiary the owner of the I should say the now owner who won't be on file, the protected property LLC. So at that point, because like I said, your land trust and your trust documents are not on file, when they pull up the record for that property, they're not going to see the beneficiary being the LLC. So by you making the LLC the beneficiary, you're actually adding on the asset protection of it without at that point, well, it actually acts as two things. So it provides the asset protection of things, but it also avoids what a lot of us are also familiar with in terms of accelerating your loan or the due on sale clause. So a lot of people that want to get a mortgage on their property or investment property, they're not able to close under an LLC. And we're not talking about commercial property, we're just talking about residential. So as far as in this case, like I said, you're not going to be able to close on an LLC, but you want that asset protection. This is the way to do it. This is a super simplified version of how to do it, but that's essentially how it works. And there's dozens of different variations of how you can structure all this. But like I said, that kind of goes beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here. So when you get your purchase agreement and you set up your mortgage, whether you're paying cash or getting a mortgage, any public records will show the owner as 123 Fake Street Trust. So pretty much that's what it is right then and there. So at the end of the day, here's your investment property that you just bought. You got your first protective barrier, some random trust name that you came up with. You're not going to want to tie it back to yourself in any form or fashion, but they're going to see the name of the land trust. So that's your first barrier. You got your second protective barrier, some random trustee, your nominee trustee that you hired temporarily, who's going to sign off on all the documents and then relinquish his control back to you right as soon as you close, and then you're back in control of everything. And then you have your ownership and the protection that goes with it with the LLC. So and that provides both inside and outside protection, which we're going to touch on a little bit during the asset protection component of this section. So like I said, by no means is this the only way to do it. There's a whole bunch of variations. And I've seen it firsthand, which is actually kind of cool because prior to the current job I'm at right now, I was actually working on setting up investment accounts for some pretty complicated and layered structures that some of our clients were doing. Some of our more wealthier clients. But like I said, this is one of the more basic ways of how to do things. So any questions right off the bat right there? Anybody? I hope I didn't lose anybody. I know I'm kind of going fast, but just kind of wanted to cover the basics.
I have a question. It's Wendy. Hi.
Hey, Wendy. Hey, hey.
Hi. Okay, so I'm assuming you're going through an attorney with this. So, what are the costs to set up this particular structure?
Yeah, so and you're right, exactly. So and we are going to talk about that a little bit later as well too, as far as getting you'll want to get a CPA and an attorney to basically the CPA will help you with the entity structure of how you should structure all of this. And then you take that plan and then you take it to your attorney and say, hey, this is the plan that my CPA recommends. Help me draft up the documentation. So with all that said, if you're doing a basic structure, I mean, at the end of the day, attorneys are gonna, you have your high end attorneys and then you have your low end attorneys and everything in between. So it really depends on the one that you're going to be working with more so. So it can range anywhere between a couple $100s on the low end as far as setting. Well, and you also have to think about like if you're going to be setting up an LLC, you have the $800 a year tax essentially or fee on that. But then they'll set up you can get the LLC set up as well, which could be a couple $100. You can get the land trust set up as well too. That'll be a couple $100 to maybe about $1,000. I've heard $1,000 on the higher end because they're not too complicated. And so I would say if you were putting together like this kind of structure, this kind of thing, I would say it'll probably run you anywhere between, I would say on the conservative end, to 2,000 to 2,500, and that's just kind of guesstimating. But like I said, that's on the conservative end. So.
Okay. And then also, you set up the land trust, but
Mhm,
then and because this is related to real estate, do
mhm.
you put in for each property multiple CD or LLCs, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that's also another highly debated thing in the real estate community is structuring whether you need to get one LLC for for each property or one LLC for maybe 2 to 5 properties or one LLC for all your properties. But it kind of comes to your risk tolerance because at the end of the day, it just boils down to, all right, if I do one LLC for each property, then you have a specific LLC protecting each property. But if you have, maybe one LLC for 5 properties, that's a bit more risky because if something goes wrong and you screw up and somebody sues you and they actually win in a court case, then basically all 5 of those properties are at risk as opposed to just one if you had done one LLC per property. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
yeah. So yeah,
And
it's
then
it's all about risk tolerance. Yeah.
so I mean, I guess you could segregate it by geography. I mean, if you're starting to buy a lot of properties, maybe you segregate it by geography. I don't know. But then
Yeah.
this nominee trustee, though, it's just a one-time temporary designation to keep yourself below the radar.
Yeah, yeah. So and it's like I said, it's perfectly legal. There's nothing sneaky about it. So essentially, there are plenty of attorneys out there that have their name on thousands upon thousands of land trusts and documentation that are out there that are filed with the state and everything because of the fact that they hold themselves out as or hold themselves out as offering that as one of their services. So yeah, they'll basically you hire them to be your nominee trustee. I know some charge anywhere from $200 to $300. They basically sign off on everything, and then at the end of the day, after they finish signing everything, I forgot the name of the form off the top of my head, but it's essentially a resignation form. So as soon as they sign off on everything, they sign off on the resignation as the nominee trustee for your land trust, and then reappoint you or whomever you want to be the actual trustee going forward.
So when that person resigns and then designates you as the current trustee,
Mhm.
it's done in such a way that you're not visible.
Right, because your trust and your trust documents are your property. You don't have to file that anywhere. That's all in your file cabinet at home. So you can make changes. You can change the trustees. You can make changes to your documents and everything. You don't file that with the state or anywhere else at the end of the day. So nobody's going to know unless you voice it out to the world that, hey, I'm changing trustees on my trust. Nobody's going to know but you. So anytime anybody does a record search, they're going to see, your you can trust me Esquire attorney, and his name's going to pop up everywhere. But it. If anybody calls to inquire about that property, he's just going to hang up on them. He's not going to tell them anything. So
Okay, so basically, what you do is when you initially set up the trust, okay, you designate somebody as a trustee, but then, and that's what everybody sees.
mhm.
So they're the people that are fronting this trust, but then nobody is going to be privy to the amendments, which is essentially what's happening
Yeah,
because you're
yeah,
making an amendment, right? Okay,
right,
okay.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, they're just yeah, think of them as the front man in terms of just their name showing up, but they don't have any other involvement or control at all with your trust.
And this is common practice?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Not a lot of people know about this, but it is a strategy that people do use. And so once I came across this, and like I said, I'm a nerd at heart. So once I saw this, I was like, oh my God, I have to tell people about this. So
Mhm.
and yeah, and it's like I've talked to, believe it or not, I've talked to quite a few people that have been in this industry for years and they've never even heard of it. So this is the first step to getting the word out. But yeah, it's 100% legal. So.
But then, if you are investing in real estate and
Mhm,
you've taken out a mortgage, the
mhm.
banks have to be privy to the changes, don't they?
Nope. Only
They
if you
don't.
tell them. As they only care as long as you're making the payments, they couldn't care less.
Mm, okay.
Seriously, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like from the research that I've done, they
Mhm.
and especially these podcasts that I've listened to that are attorneys that have seen situations they come across. They're actually like, yeah, we've had clients that that they don't know what they're sometimes they don't know what they're doing or they jump the gun on things and they reach out to their lender saying, hey, I changed the trustee or I made this change or that change, and then all of a sudden it starts popping up with all these questions, and then the lender's like, oh well, what changes are you making? You need to tell us what's going on and blah blah blah, and then it opens up a can of worms. But at the
Mm,
end of the day, that wouldn't have happened because, like I said, they really don't care. At the end of the day, they just want you to pay the mortgage payment,
mhm.
and as long as you're paying it off, you're good to go.
But then, when you take out the mortgage,
Mhm.
it's now not under your name; it's under the name of the LLC. So the LLC is borrowing.
No. So that's the thing. The LLC is only the beneficiary in the trust, but remember the trust is your documentation, so they never see that. So when they have you sign off on all the mortgage documents, they're
Mm,
gonna basically ask you, okay, yeah, who's gonna be signing off on the mortgage, and then you're basically because you can close on a living trust, and so it could be either your individual personal name or you can close under a trust, and they'll say, oh, okay, you're closing under a trust. What's the name of the trust? Okay, bam, cool. Who's signing off? Okay, cool, and then he just signs it right then and there. That's it. That's all they
And
care
then
about.
the amendment happens, the resignation, and then the reappointment
Right.
to
Yeah, but
you.
you're not
Okay,
going to do that. You're not going to do the resignation and all that stuff. You're going to do that outside of
after
the lender.
after the
Yeah,
fact.
you don't want to let the lender know that, hey, we're going to change a bunch of stuff right after we sign everything with you. I mean, not that, like I said, not that you're not allowed to, but it's like that's the whole reason why you're doing this because you don't want people to know who the actual owner is. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
So
yeah.
the nominee trustee can fill out all of the mortgage documents, all the information is his, and it's under the land trust.
Mhm,
And then once it closes
mhm.
and the money is deposited, oh, so then do you have to open up a joint account for the nominee trustee and you? So
No,
that
no, no. Like I said, after he signs everything and then resigns, he's done. He has zero involvement going forward at all. Zero involvement, zero liability, zero anything. That's why they're so willing to offer it as a service. Because after you resign as trustee, even as trustee, you don't. I mean, you have a fiduciary responsibility, but the trustee is not going to take on that liability. So in that case, when he resigns as trustee, as soon as you resign, you have no further involvement at all. So.
Hmm, interesting. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, so and we'll kind of go through this next part really quick, but we're just gonna show what Walt Disney did. Obviously, his thing is a lot more complex and beyond the scope of what we're trying to do, so we'll fly through it. But basically, what he did was he established a bunch of dummy corporations, and one of them was actually MT Lot Inc. or Empty Lot. Get it? So so he came up with some funny names to title these corporations, but basically did the same thing, came up with some LLCs and did some possible holdings LLCs and different layers, and because it can get pretty complex. I've seen them get pretty complex as well too. So he would do something like Sector 123 Trust or what have you. He would have, his corporation empty lot, and the whoever would be representing the trust would probably be an attorney of his, to sign off on all the paperwork and everything. Because obviously Walt Disney's not going to show up to the table to sign off on all this stuff. That's what he has people for, right? So and then yeah, and then making the beneficiaries his LLCs and everything for that asset protection. But I mean, in this case, he would probably just be buying it all via cash anyways. But at the end of the day, he, like I said, he used options contracts. So any public records that came up after those options contracts were exercised will show the owner as Sector 123 Trusts. So like I said, the brilliant thing was that he basically bought all these options contracts for all this land at super cheap prices, or at their actual market value, and accumulated them. So basically, out of the 30,000 acres that he got about 27,000 under contract, under his options contracts, and then executed them all at the same time. And the reason why is because, and that, like I said, that's the brilliance behind it. Because once you execute them all at the same time, then it's like, oh, okay, he bought all the land. There's no point in really jacking up the prices anymore. But like I said, he needed about 30,000 more acres to add on to Disney World that he wasn't expecting. So so he did have to pay a premium on those, but 3,000 is a lot better than 27,000 in a premium. So yeah, so just like I said, to just kind of give you a quick recap, the title, if he had done it the wrong way, on the title it would have said Walt Disney, and on record it would have said Walt Disney. So if you did a database search, it would have said Walt Disney. So that's obviously a bad thing. So land prices skyrocket. But when you're looking at it from our approach, you do a database search, but you put your little fancy structure together and make sure you do it right, and protect yourself, and you do a search result. Hopefully you got somebody on the other end looking at a piece of paper like this, looking all confused and everything. So that's a good thing, right? So what do you do next? And Wendy, this kind of goes back to what you were just asking. You want to talk to a CPA or tax professional on that entity structure, and then take that plan and then entity structure plan to an attorney, have all the documents drafted, then you're good to go. So now we're going to talk about the asset protection aspect of things, but I'll pause really quick if there are any questions that were generated with regard to the options contracts or any of the process that we just went over.
Yo, what's up, D? I would like to add, this is Lamar here. I would
Hey.
like to add that I actually did run into someone who owned a trust, because I bought a batch of skateboards that were gonna, get made.
Oh, nice.
And, the owner actually went bankrupt, and so when I tried to call him back, I had to talk to the trustee, or whoever, the person that owned it, or the trust, whoever ran the trust. And instead of me getting in contact with him, it's very difficult because he's an attorney and he's super busy and he doesn't have time to talk. And now, even as I get attorneys to find out more, it's very difficult because there's like very little information on who this person actually is. And so they kind of got me. So I tried to call the credit card up and, get everything, reversed. But because it's past 60 days, they couldn't reverse it. And that was that. So, just a learning lesson for this whole thing, negative and positive from the whole thing.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he was trying to cover himself at some point, or at least in the very beginning, or at some point.
Right.
And just, and so, but yeah, and so, well, hopefully, you're able to get that squared away, or found another.
Oh no, you just charge it to the game and keep going. It's all good.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we
all right.
keep pushing after that.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, no, but thank you for sharing. Much appreciated. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, these things are out there for a reason. I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, you kind of want to keep yourself protected, especially if you're wealthy. Hopefully all of us can experience that one day and take it from there. But yeah. So